this conflict went from 1775 to 1781, which means that for the original 13 colonies, including North Carolina,
Sure.
We've got a good 7 years to celebrate what happened in North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Donna King. I'm editor-in-chief of Carolina Journal, and this is The Debrief. This is your weekly deep dive in everything that's happening in North Carolina public policy and politics. But today, we have something a little special. We're doing a special edition in honor of July 4th. Today, we're talking about North Carolina's role in the American Revolution. The 250th anniversary is coming up really quick. We're already talking about it here at the John Locke Foundation and CJ. And if you're thinking about it, this is a great time to start really looking into it. Joining us this week, two very special guests, two of my favorite people, Donald Bryson, CEO of the John Locke Foundation, and I believe our resident historian. You seem to know everything there is to know about North Carolina history. And Renee Olmos, the John Locke Foundation's cinematographer and producer of these amazing documentaries. If you haven't seen it already, go watch A Letter to the King. It's short, and it just tells us so much about the Edenton Tea Party. It's a key part of North Carolina and American history. And now we've got a new one started, right?
Yep.
The Battle of Moores Creek. If you are a North Carolina historian, you do not want to miss this. So let's jump right in. We're going to talk about North Carolina history and the American Revolution. Donald, I'm going to start with you.
All right.
In the very beginning, the early stirrings of rebellion, North Carolina, as North Carolinians, even today, we kind of fight the establishment a little bit. That's just who we are, right? The War of Regulation in the 1760s saw farmers really pushing back against those colonial officials. How did this movement in North Carolina materialize in North Carolina?
Sure, yeah. The War of Regulation, or the Regulators Rebellion, as it's known, people in Alamance County know this very well, was the North Carolina's revolution before the Revolution. And this was really a movement in the Piedmont region, somewhat in the mountains as well, but not the coast. That's the important part of this, where farmers, generally speaking, were upset and angry with corruption in the judicial system, corruption within the General Assembly. They felt underrepresented in the assembly of the Colonial Assembly of North Carolina, and they didn't think that the way that taxes were collected were very fair. And so the General Assembly didn't take up any of the issues that were brought up by the regulators. And so this occurred, I'm doing this very fast,
That's
but this
okay.
occurred over 3 years from 1768 to 1771. This is when the British Empire needed to start collecting more taxes to pay for all the debt they accrued in the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War. And so this culminated in the Battle of Alamance in Alamance County. If you drive up and down Interstate 40 or 40/85 and you see the historic site, you should go and take a look at the historic site. And this is where Governor William Tryon marched out 1,000 militia to face off 2,000 regulators. There's a leader of the Regulator Movement named Herman Husband, who was a Quaker, who thought that the rebellion was the right thing but wouldn't resort to violence due to his Quaker sympathies. And he ran off and moved to Pennsylvania, which sort of left the regulators leaderless, and they were defeated at the Battle of Alamance. But none of the political concerns of the Piedmont were answered during that, and so the anger sort of simmered there for a few years.
Right. This is really interesting to me, Renee, when you talk about the rebellion, and particularly, folks who maybe weren't political leaders, they weren't military leaders, they were really the rank and file, the people who are most impacted by government action or inaction in this case. A Letter to the King is exactly that. If you get a chance to see it, you got to go see it, and we'll run a little bit of this now. But in the documentary, A Letter to the King, it was so fun. I got to be there with you, watch you work. It really delves into those early acts of defiance, particularly among women in North Carolina. You don't underestimate a North Carolina woman, and that's what this is, right?
Absolutely. I think that the documentary, and in general, I think what the John Locke Foundation is doing with the North Carolina History Project is telling all the stories that are a little bit underrated, that people don't really know. And I think it was impressive to realize how many people didn't really know the story of the Edenton Tea Party, and that there were women willing to stand up to the crown, and speak and gather and put it on the record, that they are willing to fight and put their name out there to say we don't want to pay these taxes.
Right. From an artistic standpoint, I really found it fascinating to be there at Penelope Barker's house, to see everybody in costumes, our own, Katie and Brianna there with everybody to reenact that. From an artistic standpoint, this had to be inspiring.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, we got to be in a legitimate, location, which was, Penelope Barker's home. That they had moved it from where it was originally. They put it in near the water at that point, and it was cool because you're also in the documentary.
Yes.
Giving a little bit of insight. We had a couple of historians and really fun experts that shed some light in understanding the landscape, understanding the context, the historical context, and what it was like, North Carolina was like back then.
Sure.
And what the people were experiencing with the taxes and whatnot. And then doing the reenactment. The reenactment was really, really fun. We had some people here from the office that participated, and our actors were fantastic.
Oh, I think
amazing. They really bring to life these characters.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Edenton Tea Party really strikes at the heart of what the John Locke Foundation fights as well, which is taxation.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about the Edenton Tea Party for people who don't know.
Sure. So the Edenton Tea Party happened October 25th, 1774. Remember, we already talked about how the Piedmont and the mountains part of the state were already angry about taxes and how things were taxed and how taxes were appropriated. And so now we have an act of defiance in Edenton, which brings the coastal counties where the real political power of the colony of North Carolina was, and they're upset about the Stamp Act. And you have the first known act that we know of where women take a leading role in or in a political movement at all in America, where you have 51 women sign the Edenton Resolves, and where they basically pledge to each other to boycott tea, standing in solidarity with sort of the Boston Tea Party and what had happened up there. And this was a major voice in what was a very busy port in a fast-growing colony of North Carolina. And Penelope Barker is one of those amazing figures that, for whatever reason, is just has become hidden through history. But some remarkable women came out of the American Revolution. Penelope Barker among them. Abigail Adams' story throughout the Revolution is also just very significant. But the Edenton Tea Party and its story should continue to be remembered. And of course, we celebrated its 250th anniversary last October.
Right. Now, the 250th is not just 2026, right?
No.
It starts well before and runs much longer. North Carolina has a pivotal role in this. Do you want? I know you can't give a Cliff Notes version, but a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's next year." It's really not. It's right now.
No, it is. It's absolutely right now, because I think when people hear the 250th anniversary, they hear the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and that's it. Bob's your uncle, and it's all over. But it's not like we signed the Declaration and England said, you know what, you're right, you're free, we're all done. No, this conflict went from 1775 to 1781, which means that for the original 13 colonies, including North Carolina, we've got a good 7 years to celebrate what happened in North Carolina. And so we've talked about the Edenton Resolves, the Edenton Tea Party. We just talked about the War of Regulation, but then coming up you have the Halifax Resolves, the Meckdeck Day, the Mecklenburg Declaration. If you want to look at the two dates on our state's flag, just happened last month, or month before last. It's July now. And then you've got the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge, the first Patriot victory in the American Revolution. The Battle of Guilford Courthouse happened in the spring of 1781, which eventually forced Cornwallis to retreat to a little town called Yorktown, where he inevitably surrenders, and which is the end of the actual conflict. There's a rich history in North Carolina that we can continue to tell and should celebrate and tell, and think about the principles that cause these people to go into an armed conflict for their own freedom.
Sure. Well, tell me about the Halifax Resolves. Why is this so significant?
Sure. So the Halifax Resolves are where I believe it was the 3rd Provincial Congress of North Carolina met in Halifax, North Carolina. Not a lot going on in Halifax nowadays. It's a small town. But they met there and they passed a resolution that authorized the delegates from North Carolina to the Second Continental Congress to vote in favor of a resolution for independence from England, making North Carolina the first of the 13 colonies to do that, which makes us first in freedom, and that's
Sure.
why it's on everybody's license plates right now. But it does make North Carolina first in
Right.
freedom, and really set up where we were in a very close supporting role to people like Richard Henry Lee and John Adams, who were pounding the table for independence. We were there to support them and fight off sort of the wishy-washy colonies of New York and Pennsylvania and South Carolina.
Sure, sure. Now, Battle of Moores Creek, Renee's going to you've already got it rolling. I know you're in the planning stages now. Lay out for me what the Battle of Moores Creek was. Why is this important? It was short. It was, in eastern North Carolina,
Yeah.
in the middle of the night, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about this.
Short, small.
Yeah.
If we have 2 national military battlefields in North Carolina, and they're both related to the American Revolution, including the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge. And essentially, the thought process from the British was that they could get a bunch of Highland Scots in the Cape Fear River Valley from Fayetteville down to Wilmington was just littered with Scots who had come to America after what Scotland refers to as the 45, the Jacobite Rebellion of 1745. And they thought that they could appeal to these Highland Scots to put down this rebellion. You know what a rebellion's done to your country, be loyal to the king. And so they were going to have a group of people go and meet up with some militia in Wilmington, and they were stopped by some patriots. And Renee is going to tell the story very well.
Yes.
But they were stopped by a group of patriots at Moores Creek Bridge, which obviously goes over Moores Creek. They took the planks off the bridge. They slathered lard all over it so it would be difficult to cross the rest of it. Eventually, it was the first Patriot victory. Most of the Tories surrendered, but that prevented the British from taking over North Carolina and prevented a Southern invasion and delayed a Southern invasion until 1780.
Wow, and this is not going to be easy to portray and bring it to us.
Absolutely.
What are the challenges you're seeing as you plan out to this next documentary on the Battle of Moores Creek?
Sure. So 3 things. I think number 1, the battle happened at night.
Okay.
So, it'll be interesting and it'll be fun to film something at night of that nature. Number 2, there was, the stories, they really touched in the heart of, these were real people with real issues, with real feelings. And when you go and visit the location, you learn about one guy. His name is John Grady, right? Yeah. John Grady, he is the only North Carolinian, or the first North Carolinian to die for freedom, to die in a battle. And he was the only casualty from the Patriots that happened. So we will tell the story from his perspective, and what it was like to be involved in that and fight and essentially laid his life, for the fight. And number 3 is, if anyone that wants to go and visit the location, it's a beautiful park. There's a lot of history, a lot of great people willing to tell you the story. And they actually also have a statue, a monument for Penelope Barker there.
Do they really?
Yeah, which is really cool.
I wonder why there.
I don't know why they put it there, but they have I think they have it to celebrate women that
rebellion.
Yeah, that took part in the revolution. Yeah, so
sure.
Yeah.
You're such a great storyteller. We've been talking about this, and you've added so much to what we're putting out here for the 250th. Why is it important to put this to film? Why do you think that this tells the story better than, or in addition to, a history book or a 3rd grade class lesson? It's just an amazing medium.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's no other medium that can really connect with an audience. Such as storytelling through video, documentary. You could say a movie. Something like that really brings you back to that time. And helps you connect and see that these were real people with real issues, with real feelings, with families, and they made hard decisions, that we can still make decisions that, promote freedom today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, actually, to that end, what's the John Locke Foundation doing to get ready for the 250th? This is something we've been talking about internally, but I really haven't seen a ton. The North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources, Natural and Cultural Resources, they have a committee going. Legislature has a committee going. I'd like to see what's really happening because I want to celebrate. What is the Locke Foundation working on?
We're rolling out different parts of the celebration over time. As you pointed out, it's not just July 4th, 2026, and that's it.
Sure.
And so we've already started
Yeah.
in our viewpoint, and we've got a call for papers that's already gone out to students, high school and college students all over North Carolina. We'll be publishing those essays. We've done the short film on the Edenton Tea Party and now the Battle of Morris Creek. We'll be doing, I'll be giving a lecture here at the John Locke Foundation at our office this fall about North Carolina's role in establishing the U.S. Navy. October 13th is the 250th birthday of the Navy. And Joseph Hughes from Edenton, North Carolina had a lot to do with that. We'll celebrate the Halifax Resolves, obviously July 4th of next year.
Right.
And then there's a lot of other things to talk about. The Battle of Kings Mountain and the 5th Provincial Congress. We get into November of 2026 and you have North Carolina's first state constitution, and there's a lot to celebrate with that. So there's lots of things to continue to talk about and talk about North Carolina's first principles.
Right, right. It is exciting. If you want to head over to johnlocke.org, you can submit a paper, you can sign up to submit a paper. And this is a really interesting, there's money prizes involved in it, certainly, but stick with us for this because the Locke Foundation is going to be doing a ton leading up to the 250th. If you haven't had a chance to see Letter to the King, Renee's Letter to the King, you can find it on our YouTube channel. I'll link it here below. And you can also see it, I think, at the museum. Is that correct? They will be soon.
No, so they opened up a separate establishment.
Okay.
The Edenton Tea Company.
The Edenton Tea Company. That's what it is.
Yes, beautiful shop. Good.
Yeah, so they are playing it at the shop.
Oh, so you can head over to Edenton and check it out there, of course. What do you hope people walk away with all of this?
Well, I think, two things. Number one is these are highly educational because they really tell you a lot of the historical facts, and number two, they're really entertaining.
Yeah,
it's a really,
they are.
a really entertaining way to learn the history of our state and become, acquainted with these stories that, as we've found, a lot of people never heard of.
Right.
And it's impressive that they don't, talk about these things in school or,
That's the thing, actually, I think is really interesting. I feel like some of these messages have been lost, especially the early messages of the founding of our country and the principles of liberty, the principles of rights.
Yes.
It's gotten diluted.
Oh, it definitely has. And you can see in the way that people talk about government and what was going on. And you and I have had some conversations about there's the American Revolution, and a few years later there was the French Revolution.
Right.
And the American Revolution took the principles of John Locke. Oh, look, that was a nice little thing. But it was, the government shouldn't do these things. People should have negative rights in that they have protection from the government of creating laws that will do X, Y, Z.
Right.
Whereas the French Revolution took a different tact, was very bloody, very violent, and unto itself, and then said, well, the government should do X, Y, Z, and those are positive rights, which just increases government's power and hold on its citizens. And of course, America has gone in wildly different directions over the past 250 years from what France has done.
Well, I mean, and now, not to drag out this point, but I think it's fascinating because we've talked about this. You're seeing the imagery in some of the protests that we're seeing today that are much more representative of the French Revolution than the American Revolution.
Yeah.
So, dig into that a little bit.
Sure. It wasn't that the patriots in America hated the king. It was that they deplored the power that a king and a parliament 3,000 miles away would have over them.
Right.
And so the entire American Revolution, from the Declaration of Independence to the Articles of Confederation to the current U.S. Constitution, is inherently skeptical of government power. And you hear people complain about, well, this is just the least productive Congress ever. That's the point.
Good.
They want it to be hard to pass laws that encroach upon the rights of the people. Whereas John Locke began with, we all have inalienable rights, natural rights that we get from God, or nature's God, as Jefferson would say, and that those rights should be dispersed throughout society, and there should never be concentrated centers of power, whether that's government or industry or one individual as a king. Then you have Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who came in the 1760s or so and really influenced the French Revolution. It said that Robespierre, who really led the revolution in France, slept with Rousseau's book on his nightstand every night, and they would do daily readings from Rousseau. But Rousseau started where Locke did. It said that we're all born with natural rights, but then he said those rights should be brought together into the general will that he said, and the general will should always come forth, which basically means that whatever the majority of the mob says, 50% plus one says, that should be the law of the land.
Wow.
And clearly the American side of that was very hesitant, like, I don't know about that, because mobs are very tempestuous, right? And that's what we're seeing now with all of sort of the progressive left on the general will should always prevail, the general will should always prevail. Like, no, democracies are inherently dangerous. Republics are elected democratically, right? The leaders are elected democratically, but they're supposed to have cooler heads and say, perhaps we should apply some wisdom and not just the heat of the moment to whatever situation we're facing.
Sure. So much to think about. Let us know what you think. Comment below and tell us what you think about what you've seen about the American Revolution, about some of the trends that we're seeing now in these protests. We want to hear from you and keep this conversation going. Thanks so much for joining us on The Debrief. We'll be right back here next Thursday. Did you learn something? Make sure you subscribe to Carolina Journal's YouTube channel and watch The Debrief every week, where we're going to be breaking down everything happening in your state government. And check out carolinajournal.com for the latest breaking news.